Well, good afternoon, Corporations Committee. Welcome to Friday. We have 3 bills before us on the agenda this afternoon. First up will be House Bill 15 after we have Barb call the roll, but we'll invite the majority floor leader to come forward while Barb's doing that.
Representative Blackburn. Representative Burt. Representative Clausen. Representative Duncan. Vice Chairman Ayer. Representative LeBeau. Representative McGuire. Representative Roscoe. Chairman Swanitzer.
All right, committee. We're all here today. First bill up will be House Bill 15, Political Subdivision Club Liquor Licenses. Please welcome Representative Summers. The floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, fellow committee members, I bring you House Bill 15 and ask for your favorable consideration. In 2021, the legislature passed Enrolled Act number 17, originally House Bill 13. Prior to July 1st, 2021, 125201G allowed for political subdivisions operating a club license on a golf course to subcontract the operations of the golf course, including the sales and service of alcohol, without transferring the liquor license to that subcontractor. Effective July 1st, 2021, 125201G was repealed, and due to that legislative action, my county no longer has statutory authority to subcontract the sale and service of alcohol at the county's golf course. My county does not want to transfer its liquor license for the golf course because restaurant contractors come and go over time, nor do they want to get into the restaurant trade. House Bill 15 simply allows a political subdivision to contract or subcontract any food and beverage service associated with its golf course to an individual or entity without having to transfer its club limited retail liquor license. And Mr. Chairman, in a letter from the Department of Revenue, from the Liquor Division of the Department of Revenue, basically they sent this letter that includes most of that information that I stated. And then the division states in this letter, which is July 16th, 2021, it says the division hopes to participate in potential future changes to Wyoming liquor laws that will perhaps reestablish the subcontractor privilege, perhaps as soon as the 2022 Wyoming legislative session. And hence I got a call. So from our county folks. And really, Mr. Chairman, that's the nuts and the bolts of it.
Questions for Representative Summers? Not seeing it this time. Representative, if you want to stick around, we'll see if the agency has any comment. Mr. Montoya. I'm just so excited to see you in your new agency role. I thought I would give you the privilege, but welcome. Industry, have any thoughts on this bill? Mr. Mosier. Okay. Anyone have any questions for the association or the state entity? Seeing none. Any other public comment on this bill? Anyone online? Seems easy enough, huh? All right, there's no further public comment. We will close public comment on House Bill 15, moved by Representative Blackburn, seconded by Representative Roscoe. Are there any amendments, committee? Any discussion you have on the bill? Seeing no discussion and no amendments, any reason to make the effective date earlier? Your county can hold out for a while? Okay. Make it quick or come to the mic at your choice.
Actually, it would be this is in very many communities, and so it's really nice for the county to hold that and not have to switch it.
How about come on down to the mic at this point? I'm not sure of how many people are watching us, but we better have you testify in person. So if you would introduce yourself on the mic, and I'll even throw some questions at you for good form.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. Tom Montoya with the Wyoming Liquor Division.
The date would be nice if they could do it sooner than July 1st. There are many communities that actually use this. Basically, the town will hold or the county will hold the liquor license, and that way they don't have to do a transfer every time there's a different F&B director, which is food and beverage. And that's really the reason this came about in the first place. It was the city of Casper that actually had asked for this in the very beginning, and many cities across the state have been using this. So,
Any further questions? So you have heard other concerns from other communities
Mr. Chairman,
around the
yes.
state? Okay. All right, seeing no further questions, thank you for coming up. At this point, committee, anybody have any amendments?
Mr. Chairman.
Representative Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that on page 2, line 10, scratch out July 1st, 2022 and insert immediately.
Is there a second? Seconded by Blackburn. Further discussion on the motion?
Question.
Seeing none and question being called, all in favor of that change, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. That motion is passed. Back on the bill. Any further discussion?
Question.
Seeing none and question being called, Barb, would you call the roll on House Bill 15?
Representative Blackburn. Representative Burt. Representative Clausen. Representative Duncan. Vice Chairman Air. Representative LeBeau. Representative McGuire. Representative Roscoe. Chairman Zwanitzer. 8 aye, 1 no.
Okay, and Representative Summers, you'll be carrying this on the floor. Okay. Have a good afternoon. Next up, committee, more liquor licenses. House Bill 55 brought to us by Representative Walters. Welcome, Representative Walters. Let's talk about airports. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today to discuss House Bill 55 with you. This bill is in relation to liquor licenses at commercial airports or airports. And I would, as I get into this, I'll explain that there would be an amendment to tighten this up and really make it a little more effective. But really what occurs in so many communities is for the flying public, there's a flight or two a day at the most. And so if there is a vendor offering a beverage, they're only open for an hour or two a day at the most. And it's just tough to make a living doing that. And so, and then there's the next issue that comes into place with, there's only 3 liquor licenses allowed within the county within a 5-mile veil of the municipality. And so it utilizes one of these liquor licenses at an airport for only a couple hours of business a day. And so this would simply allow that airport license to be exempt from that 3 within a 5-mile veil of the municipality. So then I would bring you to the bill. It really is on page 2, the new language. And it starts on line 4 of page 2 and goes through line 6. Retail liquor licenses issued to airports in a county shall be exempt from this paragraph. So that's the existing bill. Where I would offer an amendment is on line 5 after the word to insert commercial service and then delete NA county. And so the line would read, retail liquor licenses issued to commercial service airports shall be exempt from this paragraph. It really tightens it up by saying, and commercial service is an FAA designated term, so we don't need to define it. The department that deals with airports in the state knows what that is. And so they could certainly provide the definition to the liquor division if it was needed. And what it does is it makes sure some farmer who has a grass strip in his pasture doesn't get a liquor license out of it in that regard. And so that really does, it tightens it up. It also addresses the concern with airports that are within a municipality. By adding that commercial service airport language, it makes that exemption applicable. And those were the concerns that I've heard since the introductory vote on this. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would take any questions.
Questions for Representative Walters? Not seeing any at this time, Representative. Don't go too far. Back to the state agency. Come on down. We'll let you drink while you play golf. Now, I assume this is just for passengers in an airport, not pilots, but we'll double check. Mr. Montoya?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this. I know that 5-mile rule can be a little bit confusing, so if anybody has any questions, I should be happy to answer any.
And so this comes into play because of the licensing formula about how many maximum retail liquor licenses you can have inside a municipality and in a county. Do you know why the 5 miles came into effect? Is that really just so if you have a county liquor license, you can't put it right on the other side of a city? And I can ask the association too, but I thought I'd ask you first.
Mr. Chairman, that has been on the books for many years. And I'm assuming it's because they didn't want a bunch of county retail licenses right on the city line, and then they could be annexed into the town. Because also in that previous bill that last year, which was House Bill 13, we actually did away with that. If the license was actually annexed into the town, it couldn't move for a period of 6 years. Now they can do that because it rarely, and I mean rarely ever happens. I've been with them for 31 years and I've seen maybe 2 or 3 happen in all those years. So, it was really restrictive if that happened. I mean, I've never actually seen a town annex some land just to bring a bar into the city. That's just never happened. So basically this really just deals with county liquor licenses, because retail licenses, they can issue those to the city if a city council wants to do that. But this just gives that exemption on that 5-mile rule. For instance, in the city of Cheyenne, there are 3 that have been there forever, but then due to annexation, 2 more licenses came in. So the city of Cheyenne actually has 5. So 3 licenses would have to go away unless this bill gets passed. And if this bill were to get passed and there was an airport on the county right within that 5-mile zone, it would play into effect. That's just hypothetical.
One more question. So when we're talking about retail liquor licenses, and I didn't pull out the statute in 124201, does that include the ability to sell packaged liquor? Is that only to serve liquor at that establishment?
Great question, Mr. Chairman. This allows both on and off premise. So they can have a bar, they can have a package store, they can have both.
Any concerns with having your local county airport also being a liquor distributor that people can go to even if flights aren't coming in and buy a 6-pack?
Mr. Chairman, the division doesn't have any concerns, but I would venture to say, most airports are either going to be through a joint powers board or something like that. And I would assume most of those will have something in their lease that says they can't sell it for off-premise consumption.
All right, further questions? Mr. Montoya? Not seeing any. Thanks. Mr. Mosier? We used to have a bar in our airport here in Cheyenne, but I don't remember them ever letting you take a 6-pack home.
Get this on, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Mike Mosier, Wyoming State Liquor Association. Yes, we did. It was a very fine bar and restaurant. And I'll actually include this. My testimony will be brief, but just to clarify, first of all, we do support this legislation. We worked with Representative Walters on it. The airport bars and restaurants have changed. As some of you know, I owned one for years and it was a successful one. We were the politician's bar. We had Governor Ed's booth. We were but back in the day, about 95% of our business was not airport business. We were at the airport, but it was all other people. In fact, CFD was big for us, Cheyenne Frontier Days. I remember one Wednesday morning during Cheyenne Day where my daytime bartender and I poured over 250 free pour Bloody Marys before 10 a.m. I mean, we did a lot of business. Now, things have changed. In fact, my airport manager was Jerry Olson. And some of you may have seen Jerry Olson Field, who was a dear friend. But things have changed. There's only one airport in the state of Wyoming that has a successful bar and restaurant who does really good business. And in fact, the owner is across the building from you all. It's a lot different. I sold my place in July of 2000. Well, November 11th, 2001, airports changed. When you have a couple cocktails and dinner now, instead of walking to your car, you walk by a couple guys in camouflage with M4 carbines, or you walk by a couple cops, which in popular vernacular would be a real buzzkill. It's not much fun having to walk a gauntlet to go back to your car. And so it's not as easy to make money at airports now. Number one, we don't have much traffic. Number two, with the county ones, there are ways out. Now, with a lot of places, and I think most airports make do with a restaurant liquor license, which they can't. Restaurant licenses can serve any type of alcohol. They're unlimited in issuance, but you have to sell 60% food. So if you want to sell little snacks and a couple beers during the time the plane is loading, it doesn't work. And so this bill does a good job of addressing that. Do I think it's going to be expansively used? No, but like good legislation, it's targeted. And I don't think there'll be any unintended consequences. I really don't see any problems with this bill. Now, there are two bills that kind of do the same thing. Senate File 12, we testified on this morning, addresses the same issue in a different way. We're supportive of both. If they both cross over, you'll have to probably pick one or the other. So I assume the good bill sponsors will do an arm wrestling contest or flip a coin or something, or decide which one will move forward. With the amendment, we support that wholeheartedly. I grew up in, some of you know where the Sandhills in Nebraska are, and about half the ranches now have airports. And so you don't want to just let anybody. There was an issue Mr. Montoya and I worked on years ago about rodeo liquor licenses, which basically meant if you had a corral with a wild horse, you could have a license. So we want to make sure commercial service is in there. Lastly, Mr. Chairman, your question about off-premise sales. Off-premise sales can be quite useful because people buy gift packets. If there's a bottle of a whiskey or something that's locally, you want a souvenir, and the souvenir says something local. And so that's where your off-premise sales really happen. And so off-premise is never used, to my knowledge, in an airport for carrying out the parking lot. But if you want a souvenir from Wyoming, you still have a little room in your baggage, that's what you do it for. So with that, Mr. Chairman, we support the bill. We support the amendment. I wish there were more bills like this in this world. The last two have been happy ones, and we support both of them.
Representative Roscoe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Mosier, are there any restrictions, just as personal curiosity, about being within, after you go through security, if you can have your liquor license inside or your liquor store inside, or before you go, or maybe what would the choice of the vendor be?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Roscoe, good question, because it depends on how the place is done. There's a place coming into Cheyenne that's using, I believe, a restaurant liquor license where the access is on the outside. It's just part of the airport. Whereas if you look at the place in the northwestern corner of the state owned by a good senator, you're in this secured area. So it can be both. To me, this is more of a place that's already in the secured area. Because if it has outside access, anybody can come in and out, and then you go through security. But a lot of places, it's within security, and that's part of what limits. I mean, back when I had a bar and restaurant, there really wasn't a secure area, or maybe every place was secure back then. But things have changed in that area. So I hope that answers your question.
Further questions for Mr. Mosier? Not seeing any.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Realtor second in position on this bill,
We love it.
or Wham? Any other public comment on House Bill? Is there someone online?
Mr.
Nope, sure.
Chairman, we do have a Mr. Devin Brubaker.
Bring in Mr. Brubaker. Nice to hear from him. Hi, Devin. Floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Devin Brubaker, Airport Director, Southwest Wyoming Regional Airport in Rock Springs, and also representing the Wyoming Airports Coalition. Just briefly, would like to let you all know that we support this bill, support the amendment, appreciate Representative Walters bringing this forth, and we look forward to answering any questions you may have.
Committee, do we have any questions for the airport operators? Do you have a reception this year? I don't remember seeing one.
So, Mr. Chairman, we actually do not have a reception this year. We've had very poor luck during budget sessions with receptions and attendance. So we will be down there and we will have a presence starting Monday, but we do not have a reception this year.
Any-
I might add, Mr. Chairman, there will be some snacks and lunches coming your way in lieu of the reception, however.
It's what Representative Duncan tells me as well. So just missing you all this year, but hopefully next year, for those of you who run again. Any other further questions for airport operators? Seeing none. Any further public comment on House Bill 55? Insurance people are okay with people drinking at airports? Okay. I mean, checking. All right, committee, seeing no further public comment, we'll close public comment. Pleasure on House Bill 55. Does anyone else ever notice it's the same three people that move all the bills and it's like a race? No, moved by Representative Blackburn, seconded by Representative Duncan. Amendments Committee on House Bill 55 for discussion. Representative McGuire, you're good with this? You're on the airport. Yep. You're my airport guy, so I always check with you. Representative Duncan, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that on page 5, page 2, line 5, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody, that we want to insert after the word to, commercial service.
And delete in the county?
And delete in a county.
I guess they're all probably in a county. But okay, so is there a second on that amendment by Bert? So Barb, are you good or do we need to read it? So this,
Commercial
service.
In a county. Retail liquor licenses issued to commercial service airports shall be exempt from this paragraph.
Thank you.
okay, further discussion on that motion? Seeing none and question being called, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. That motion is also passed. Are there
Question.
further amendments or discussion? Seeing none and question ambitiously being called repeatedly. Barb, if you'd call the roll on House Bill 55.
Representative Blackburn. Representative Burt. Representative Clausen. Representative Duncan. Vice Chairman Air. Representative LeBeau. Representative McGuire. Representative Roscoe. Chairman Swanitzer. 8 aye, 1 no.
And Representative Walters, you've got this on the floor. Thank you. Thank you. We'll give it 30 seconds for the room to shuffle around here. Next up will be Insurance Investment Amendments, House Bill 87. I was just, apparently the realtors were here for that last bill.
They represent airports too.
Oh, okay. Got it. All right, moving on to House Bill 87, Insurance Investment Amendments brought to us from the Select Committee on Blockchain. And my very own Chairman Olson is here to present the bill. Go ahead.
Yes, and thank you, Chairman Swanitzer, committee. It is, it's been a while since I've been in front of corporations. So every once in a while, blockchain likes to do something that will send us to corporations just because of how much I enjoy appearing in front of this committee. Wyoming Department, we've been working with the Wyoming Department of Insurance on this, and you will hear from the department as well. And I'm sure they're going to be able to answer if you have any terribly substantive questions. They've spent a lot of time on this. Ladies and gentlemen of the committee, what this bill does is it updates Chapter 7 of the Wyoming Insurance Code to allow Wyoming domestic insurers to invest in additional investment products that are not currently allowable or addressed in statute. It adds 5 definitions to Chapter 7 to provide clarity. It increases the allowable limit for diversified mutual fund investments from 5% to 10% per fund. Here are the allowable investments. Obligations issued by any solvent corporation in a foreign jurisdiction that are traded in the US and denominated in the US dollar and regulated by US security laws. These are known as Yankee bonds. Second allowable, interests in partnerships or limited liability companies, provided the domestic insurer meets the specified capitalization requirements. And number three, securities issued by an exchange trade fund, an ETF. Okay, so those are the allowable investments. The bill also increases the limit on miscellaneous investments from 5% to 10% for domestic insurers that meet specified capitalization requirements. And it updates Chapter 24 of the Insurance Code to allow Wyoming domestic insurers to request permission from the insurance commissioner.
Question already, Representative Burt, if you have one.
Yeah, I'm actually mid-statement. Can I finish the statement first?
Finish statement.
Thank you. Update Chapter 24 of the Insurance Code to allow Wyoming domestic insurers to request permission from the insurance commissioner to use an out-of-state custodian to hold their assets if there aren't any financial institutions located in Wyoming that have adequate technology and competitive fee structures. That also provides guidance for calling those assets back to Wyoming if there are financial solvency concerns with domestic insurer. And that statement was actually the end of my overview of the bill, Mr. Chairman. So I appreciate the latitude. It's effective July 1, 2022, and there is no fiscal impact. And I certainly will take any questions.
All right, Representative Burt, first up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really no question. I just wanted to let you know that I don't have any of the even pages. Correct.
Oh,
That would
I
be-
don't either.
That would be the even pages.
Neither do I.
We didn't want you to see the even pages.
Anybody else missing the full bill in front of them? I have mine.
I brought my own.
You have your computer? You can share mine with them, Duncan, but
I have an electronic version, so it's okay, but.
if you have, do you want a copy of a printed out, Representative Burt, or can you find it online? You'll be okay? Okay. Representative Duncan can share mine. Just maybe next time we get a copy job, we'll make sure that all the pages are attached in all of our folders.
So, Mr. Chairman, Representative Burt, that you're missing the even pages, and page 2, those are the definitions that I referenced. Walking you through the bill here, Mr. Chairman, just really quickly. Page 1 creates the new paragraphs, which create our definitions over onto page 2. So those definitions carry through. Top of page 4 are where we address the eligible investments definitional change from country to jurisdiction and foreign jurisdiction. Page 5, diversification of and limits on the investments. Page 6 are the 5% to 10% change limits that I referenced, going on to page 7 as well. Page 8 is,
Go ahead, Representative Duncan.
Representative, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Olson, sorry, there's a glare on my screen. Back between page 5 and 6 on those changes, you just mentioned that it was changing from 5 to 10%. Why?
Representative Olson, if you know.
so let's go back here. This is the allowable limit for the diversified mutual fund investment from 5 to 10%. So I think your question would be best for the department.
Any other questions, for Representative Olson? Well, I got him. Yep, Representative Roscoe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Olson, this, I'm not sure that it pertains to the bill or not, but I'm going to ask it anyway, that when we're talking about foreign investors in this, in Wyoming was getting a little bad press not too long ago about not knowing who those investors were with, and does this affect, is there any way to find out, do these people have to, as a foreign investor, do they have to let our insurance commission or our country know who they are? Thank you, Mr.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Roscoe, thank you. That is actually a really good question because I know there was in the 30 seconds we had on the floor, there was some comment about the Cayman Islands, which is confusing to me. But the way that this amendment works is, well, two things, and the department can definitely speak to the process a little deeper in general, but insurance companies that are regulated in Wyoming and have to have the permission of the state of Wyoming to do business in the state of Wyoming. Under this provision, it starts on, it's called I just call it the Section E provision. That's on page 9. If you go to the home 26, 24, 129, this provision speaks to what we want to address that issue, which is a physical location of that company here in Wyoming. So this bill is very specifically trying to do its best to prohibit some company from, say, the Cayman Islands, as an example, from availing itself of these of the laws in Wyoming and doing business in Wyoming, but not actually being in Wyoming. So this statute is very much intending to create a physical location for that business that is here, that is first approved by the Department of Insurance. So they will have to, if they're not already here, and there are, I think you'll actually hear from at least one insurance company that is here in Wyoming that is interested in this law. So I should back up and say, you may just be looking at local companies. But if a company wanted to avail itself of this, it needs to locate itself into Wyoming physically. So I do think, Representative Roscoe, that, and Mr. Chairman, that is what is really going, I think, to cut back on that problem. If you're referencing, for example, to possibly like the Panama Papers scenario with limited liability companies, this is very different because with a limited liability company, I can set that company up. I can be anywhere in the world and I can have a registered agent that I pay $25 a year to somewhere randomly in Cheyenne or in Wyoming to give myself my residency requirement. You can't do that here. You're going to be under the Department of Insurance's authorization and you're going to be physically located here. You know, that's on the cheap end. Yeah. It can get
Mr.
pretty high.
Chairman.
Representative Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Olson, correct me in my memory, when we were doing all of these blockchain legislation in the beginning, wasn't some of the criteria was that we wanted them to establish a physical presence in Wyoming? That's part of our blockchain statutes.
Representative Olson.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Duncan, thank you. It's not in everything. I think out of the 20 some odd bills in blockchain, that's definitely not true across the board, but it has been a consistent theme that the whole idea is with anything that we've done through this committee is to diversify our economy. That's what we're doing here. We're trying to attract new and different businesses to Wyoming or allow growth for businesses that are currently here. But yeah, there's always been a drive to keep them here. And in this, we're very specifically requiring it in this statute. And sometimes we didn't get quite that far, I think, on some of the blockchain legislation, for example, like a Series LLC or even a DAO at the end of the day can be located anywhere in the world. The DAO company itself doesn't have to physically reside in Wyoming. So I think this is a little more aggressive step to making sure they are in fact Wyoming companies.
For Representative Bear.
Mr. Chairman, Chairman Olson, How much demand do you anticipate there will be for insurers to use these new investment vehicles?
Chairman Olson, no?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Iyer. So we will be the only jurisdiction in the United States that allows for this. And we heard testimony, we definitely heard testimony from companies that are located throughout Wyoming that were very interested in it. But we definitely believe that we'll be attracting. I don't want to overpromise anything. So I don't want to say, here's how many companies or percentage or it's going to be huge or anything like that, Representative Iyer. But Mr. Chairman, it being the only jurisdiction in the US that's really allowing this to occur, I think there's a good potential that we're going to attract some good companies.
Further? Other questions for Chairman Olson, Representative McGuire?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So if a company does take advantage of the exception that's being presented with this bill, what benefit is there to the state of Wyoming? I'm missing that. So if you could please help me try and pin that down.
Chairman Olson.
Mr. Chairman, Representative McGuire, I guess I'm a little confused. What do you mean if they exercise the exemption under E? Is that your question?
Sure, probably whatever. What is the benefit to the state of passing this legislation?
Well, I think I've been talking about it. The ultimate benefit is to have them here. And again, as I spoke about, there are companies, Mr. Chairman, that are already located here that are interested in this legislation. So I think it depends on Representative McGuire and Mr. Chairman, your idea or your definition of what it means to benefit Wyoming. If your only view of that is a taxation to the state coffers, if that's the question, is the general fund. I think that for example, the department can highlight the application fee, the expense. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's a pretty expensive number. I think it's $750. Oh, well, I was hoping it was $10,000. Anyway, so there's going to be a fee for that. But I think the real benefit comes when they're physically brick and mortar companies that are paying property taxes, they're employing, they're paying sales tax, they're engaging in our economy.
Representative Air.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do you see any possibility of increased risk for insurance companies who take advantage of these new investment opportunities? Is there any possibility that their risk could be increased?
Representative Olson.
Oh, Chairman, Representative Iyer, I'm not in this business. I wouldn't offer you investment advice. I'm not an investment advisor. I think you'd have to ask those companies individually if they think it is a good investment choice or not. I think from our standpoint as the legislature, our concern is probably more that if the investment goes sour, what happens to the company, which again is the purpose of having the company's assets physically located in the state of Wyoming. The department can speak deeper to that as well. But if the company were to get into some kind of trouble, then whatever assets are here, that gives them a greater ability to reach them for recovery. So I would speak to that as a policy decision for the legislature that if anything, I think what we tried to answer is your ability to reach and grab assets when things go wrong. But in terms of whether it's a good investment or a bad investment, I think that's up to the company and the individual investors.
Okay. Further questions, Mr. Chairman? Go ahead, Representative McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm not trying to be obtuse, so please don't take this. But during the savings and loan scandal back in the 70s, a lot of the insurance companies were involved with the savings and loans. and a lot of that money disappeared. And the side effect for the Wyoming citizens, and this is what I'm thinking about, the side effect for the Wyoming citizens is at that point, at that time, a lot of these insurance companies were acting like banks and or investment, quote unquote, investment companies. And so there were a lot of people, a lot of ranches and other things that were incorporated in these quote unquote insurance vehicles, I think that they called them. And when everything imploded, there were a lot of ranches that were left, ranchers that had invested in these insurance things, and all that money just disappeared. So I'm curious, if these investments are going to be made outside of the jurisdiction, what security do the people who that invest in these insurance programs, what security will there be for them? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Olson, if you know.
Mr. Chairman, Representative McGuire, you're envisioning the scenario where the company is not located in Wyoming and the company doesn't bank in Wyoming. And I just don't, I think if you ask that question to the department, I think you should ask that question to the department in terms of whether they would even be interested in approving an application like that. And because I mean, that's not the intent of Representative McGuire, and I say that not because I'm trying to punt the question, but it's not the intent of the bill. The intent is to not have that scenario occur. So I don't think that's I think there's a lot of risk for Wyoming if that occurs. The risk that we're talking about, being able to reach the assets is important. So it's physical, I just think that's a big piece of it. And maybe the department would say differently, but I don't think that there's going to be a high approval rate of an application that fits those qualifications. And I think the department will tell you that, the legal liability for the insurer doesn't go away. It still has that legal, it has the legal liability for all of those investments. So, and as you know, as an attorney, then how does the individual who's harmed by it, how do they obtain recovery? And that's really, now we're talking about the whole purpose of the Department of Insurance, right? That's the purpose of it is to, when we say regulate those insurance companies, its whole purpose is to make sure that that it's not going to let in an application that it doesn't feel comfortable with, that could arise to a scenario where something went bad and it absolutely can't reach any assets on behalf of those investors to repay it. So that's why I say I think it's a good question for them, Representative McGuire.
For the question, Chairman Olson. Seeing none yet, don't go too far. Department of Insurance. Come on down.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Good to see you, Deputy Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Linda Johnson. I'm the I was chief examiner for so long. I'm the deputy commissioner with the Wyoming Insurance Department. And I wrote down some of the questions here, so I'll try to take them in order. The first question was about mutual funds, increasing the limit from 5% to 10%. And just as a little background, so in Chapter 7, we have some guardrails in Chapter 7 regarding insurance company investments. So in general, insurance companies can invest only 5% of their assets into any one fund or investment. So if you want to invest in Procter & Gamble, if a domestic insurance company wants to invest in Procter & Gamble, they can only put 5% of their assets into that stock. So what we're doing here with mutual funds, because mutual funds, these are diversified by their definition because they're investing in a lot of different companies. So they're already diversified. So we're increasing the limit from 5% to 10%. And we feel that's safe because, again, not all their eggs are in one basket, because a mutual fund invests in a lot of different companies. And this is not out of line with other states, what they're doing. The NAIC puts together a compendium of state law laws. And so we did some research on that. And there's about 22 states. Now, granted, state laws differ a little bit, but in general, there's about 22 states that are like us that have the 5% limit per investment. There's actually 15 states that go up to 10%. So I don't think we're out of line here. We're generally pretty conservative. Again, we don't want our insurance companies to have all their eggs in one basket, but again, mutual funds just by their nature are invested in a lot of different stocks. So it's not like having all your eggs in one basket. Does that answer that? Okay. And regarding the foreign jurisdiction question, how foreign jurisdiction is used in this bill. So this bill just applies to Wyoming domestic insurers. So we have 4 companies that are Wyoming domestic insurers. So what Chapter 7 does is it spells out the investments that they can hold. So when we're defining foreign jurisdiction, we're actually talking about investments in foreign jurisdictions, like if you want to buy a foreign stock. So that's how foreign is used in this bill, not as far as foreign investors coming in to Wyoming, if that clarifies that issue. So is that okay? The next question, how much demand to use these new investments? We're actually not the only state that allows these investments that we're adding to Chapter 7. So there are other states that do allow ETFs and different investments. Actually, our statutes have, a lot of these investment statutes haven't been updated since 1983. So there's a lot of investment products out there that our statutes don't currently address. And so when we met with our industry, there were investments that they wanted to make that are not specifically allowable in our Chapter 7 right now. So that's why we did want to open that up and allow more types of investments. So hopefully then, our current domestics can use those investment products, but then also maybe we can attract other companies that would like to use those investment products as well, or invest in those products as well. How does this benefit Wyoming? Again, the point, or hopefully what would happen is that we would attract companies because, like say, making our investment laws a little more favorable, we would hopefully attract companies to Wyoming. And how would that benefit Wyoming? We do have the brick and mortar statute. So in order for a company to be a Wyoming domestic insurance company, they do have to be here, have their people here, and their principal place of business in their home office here. So that would be the benefit, is bringing people here and business here. So, and insurance companies, if they're the direct writer of the business, they pay premium tax as well, in addition to that $750 application fee. Now, if they're a reinsurance company, which we were also hoping to attract, reinsurance companies don't pay premium tax because they're not directly writing the policy. They're reinsuring the insurance company. So they would not pay us premium tax. So that's kind of where the brick and mortar becomes important, because we want them to have something that they're bringing to Wyoming. Does that make sense? Okay.
Representative Roscoe, question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Johnson, I don't mean to interrupt, but so insurance companies large insurance companies can almost be like banks. And so I was wondering if there's any limitation, or is there any amount of assets that they have to invest or have to hold in Wyoming to be considered legitimate?
Ms. Johnson, go ahead.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, so currently we require, the statutes require in Chapter 24, Section 129 for all of our domestics to have all of their assets in Wyoming. Now, there are a few exceptions there. If they are licensed in a foreign jurisdiction and that jurisdiction requires them to have a deposit, they can have those assets outside of Wyoming. But in general, if they're a Wyoming domestic, their assets have to be in Wyoming.
And after this, I guess my basic question, have we talked to the Secretary of State's office about, securities and transactions and owning, investments in foreign jurisdictions? And have they been at the table at all during this conversation?
Mr. Chairman, no. Since this just involves insurance company investments, we have not involved. Yeah. Regarding a couple of other questions regarding increased risk, if this would add increased risk, Again, we did put guardrails in the bill for some of those investments, like the foreign investments. There's a 20% aggregate limit on foreign investments. So they can't put all of their investments into foreign companies. Also, in the interests in partnerships or limited liability companies, those tend to be your hedge funds. And so we did put, again, the 5% limit per investment and then an aggregate of 10%, because hedge funds tend to not be as liquid. So we don't want to have an insurance company invest all of their funds in a hedge fund, and then they can't get those funds back in order to pay policyholder claims. So we did put some guardrails in the language here. And we did, like say, allow those interests in partnerships or limited liability companies just for the well-capitalized larger insurance companies that have 100 million in surplus and a 500% RBC ratio, risk-based capital ratio, so that they're the well-capitalized companies that can invest in those types of riskier investments. So, let's see. As far as we talked a little bit about liquidation and if the assets or the investments go south, there we have a regulatory framework. So kind of like banks, you're probably familiar with the FDIC if a bank goes under. With insurance companies, we have what's called the guarantee associations. And there's one for life and health insurance companies, and then there's one for property and casualty companies. And so those funds will kick in if an insurance company goes into liquidation or goes insolvent. So there is a safety net there that policyholders will be paid. And also the commissioner has authority. So if we see a domestic insurance company investing in stuff that we think is a little risky and might go south, the commissioner has authority in Chapter 3, Section 132 to make that company divest of any investments that are unsound. In fact, the commissioner has a lot of authority in that section for other issues as well, but one of them is investments. He can make them divest of investments that are not safe.
So if I can follow up that. So the reason this went, and I guess I shouldn't make an assumption, but question, and I can always have the chairman come back. The reason this came to the blockchain financial tech and digital innovation technology, is there an anticipation that when we say foreign assets, we're talking about potential cryptocurrencies or other, I can't remember all the acronyms, but other of our more new age funds and tokens and those type of things? Is that where this is going in your mind, or we're just talking about foreign assets that, if 20 years ago, I would think are foreign assets?
So, Mr. Chairman, with this bill, foreign investments are just like stocks and bonds, those kind of investments. However, a couple of years ago, there was a bill to add digital assets as an allowable investment for an insurance company. So that is in our code. Yeah, already.
Other questions for the department? Representative McGuire.
Thank you. So are any of our domestic companies currently asking for this legislation?
It might be behind you, but Ms. Johnson, have they approached you? And maybe for the committee, could you tell the committee what our four are? Domestics, thank you.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, yes, we actually worked with the industry and Blue Cross Blue Shield is behind me. They're one of our domestics, and they were actually one that helped draft this language because they had some investments that it wasn't clear in statute whether they could invest in them or not. And so they brought up a lot of this language, and so we worked with them. And then our other domestic companies, we have four. So we have Mountain West Farm Bureau, which is located in Laramie, and they have a subsidiary insurance company called 360 Insurance Company. And then we have Delta Dental Plan of Wyoming, and then Blue Cross.
Follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So looking again at the exemption language in 2624-129, and this would be page 10, the first line on the page. Institutions in this state do not have adequate technology to support the insurer's required financial reporting requirements. Is that, with today's day and age, is that a reality? I mean, I just can't imagine how complex are these reports.
Ms. Johnson, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is actually an issue that came up while we were meeting with our domestic industry, because currently we don't have a lot of the bigger banks in the US that have a physical location in Wyoming. And so that issue came up. Right now, all of our 4 domestic companies use a Wyoming financial institution. So this isn't an issue yet. But the issue came up where there's not a lot of competition in this space. And so at some point, they may need to go out of state to use a custodian that can handle the technology that they need. And I know you can't see this, but insurance companies have to do a lot of reporting to our department. And every year they have to fill out what's called a Schedule D that lists every investment that they have. So you can imagine a $700 million company has a lot of investments. And so for each investment, every stock, every bond, they have to fill out 18 columns of information for that investment. So there is a lot of reporting involved, and the custodians, the financial institutions do help them with that reporting. And I think the folks behind me can speak to that more because they're on that side. I just see the reports when they're filed. So I'm not involved with all the work that goes into developing them.
Okay. Any other questions for the Department of Insurance? Seeing none. Thanks very much. Commissioner, you're good as well. Okay. Guess we'll hear from our industry partners. If you guys are here to testify, okay. Welcome, corporations. It's always a pleasure when you get to our committee.
Good afternoon, members of the Corporations Committee, Mr. Chairman. My name is Heather Roday. I'm representing Blue Cross Blue Shield of Wyoming. As was stated earlier, we are one of the 4 domestics. And just to be very clear, we're a health insurance company. So we don't have any banking that we do as part of we don't have a banking offering. I'm the author of the email that got sent to you all Tuesday evening at 6:25, in case you all hadn't seen that. But I have to confess that the expert behind what's in the email is actually sitting next to me. And so with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to introduce Sandy Adam, who is our controller, and she's here to offer her thoughts and her expertise.
All right, welcome, Sandy. Floor is yours.
Thank you. Yes, we just wanted to come as Blue Cross Blue Shield and say that we are in support of this bill. Listening to the questions that were coming through, the one I'd like to answer is a custodian question, if I may, on page 10. So we were put in a position where, because we have all the Schedule Ds that we have to file that give the investments, we have an investment software that helps us. And so they have to work closely with our custodian to get that information in order to fill out those forms. And a couple of years ago, we had a bank who had a presence in Wyoming, and they sold their custodian practice to somebody who does not have a presence in Wyoming. And when they did that, we only had one option of where to go to in order to get this. And I want to make it clear, we're perfectly happy with who we have and who we got. But the concern there was that they would also sell their practice, or what happens if they find out that they can charge us whatever they want and we have no options to go elsewhere. So that's why we brought the concern up, is that we just really wanted to make sure that we could do the reporting that we need to give to the Department of Insurance, but still have that option if something were to happen or something unforeseen happens with the custodian we have now.
Good. Any questions so far? Guess I covered it pretty well. Committee, nothing? You made it sound so easy. All right.
Thank you.
Any further public comment? Nothing from one of our political parties or from the ACLU? Just checking. Is there anyone online? Seeing none. All right, committee, we'll close public comment on House Bill 87. What's the pleasure of the committee? Moved by Representative LeBeau. Seconded by Representative Air. See, now I feel like everybody's moved and seconded the bill today. Appreciate that. All right, I don't know if we need to go page by page committee. I didn't hear any amendments or proposals, so maybe I'll just say, or ask for any amendments or any discussion on this bill. We certainly didn't have a lot of questions today, did we? All right, well, seeing no amendments forthcoming or questions, we'll have Barb call the roll on House Bill 87.
Representative Blackburn. Representative Burt. Representative Clausen. Representative Duncan. Vice Chairman Air. Representative LeBeau. Representative McGuire. Representative Roscoe. Chairman Zwanitzer. 9 ayes.
And Chairman Olson, I trust that you will not be handling this on the floor. I'm sure I could. All right. Thank you much. Committee, I believe we had 2 bills referred to us this morning, and we have a potential 5 more later today. And so I don't know how strict my committee secretary is going to be on that 2 o'clock deadline. But we're going to have a talk, and if they're not up Monday at noon, as you'll know, bills have to be heard, I think, by Thursday next week in the first house. So it might be a whole lot of stuff on Monday and Wednesday, and I will try to do some that say if introduced and referred. But hopefully by 5 o'clock tonight, you'll have your Monday bills for lunch figured out. Anything else come before the committee? Seeing none.